Is the US dollar's global dominance in jeopardy? Trump's latest threat exposes America's deepest fear. Donald Trump has once again grabbed headlines with a bold economic threat, this time aimed at the BRICS nations. He has announced that if BRICS countries even discuss an alternative to the US dollar, he will impose a massive 150% tariff on their exports. But why is Trump so alarmed? According to him, BRICS is attempting to dismantle the US dollar's global dominance by creating an independent financial system that could bypass American control. His response? Economic coercion, using tariffs as a weapon to punish any BRICS country that dares to challenge the supremacy of the dollar. At the core of this controversy lies a crucial question. If BRICS were truly irrelevant, why would Trump feel the need to impose such draconian tariffs just to stop them from exploring a new financial system? After all, if the US dollar is as strong and invincible as Trump claims, why would Washington be so afraid of BRICS taking this step? The answer is clear. America is in a state of panic. Trump's reaction exposes the deep-seated fear of losing control over global finance. But can the U.S. really stop BRICS from achieving its financial goals? To understand this complex issue, we need to dive deeper into the power dynamics that have kept the dollar on top for decades. For almost a century, the U.S. dollar has been the world's reserve currency, giving Washington immense power over global trade and finance. This status forces countries around the world to hold large reserves of U.S. dollars, use them to settle international trade, and rely on American-controlled financial systems like SWIFT, Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. This system has allowed the U.S. government to manipulate global markets, print money at will, and impose severe sanctions on countries that refuse to follow Washington's orders. However, BRICS, which includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is actively working to break free from this system. The group is exploring alternative financial mechanisms to reduce the world's reliance on the US dollar, and Trump's extreme reaction reveals just how threatened the US is by these efforts. One of the key pillars of America's financial dominance is the petrodollar system, which has underpinned US economic supremacy for decades. In the 1970s, Washington struck a deal with Saudi Arabia, ensuring that all oil transactions would be conducted in US dollars. This agreement forced every oil-importing nation to hold reserves of US dollars, artificially boosting the currency's value and making it the default medium for global oil trade. But now, BRICS is challenging this system in ways that could change the global economy forever. China and Russia have already abandoned the dollar for their bilateral trade, with over 90% of their transactions now conducted in yuan and rubles. India, too, has begun purchasing Russian oil in rupees, cutting the dollar out of energy transactions altogether. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have openly discussed the possibility of selling oil in yuan, signaling that even America's historic energy allies are considering alternatives to the petrodollar. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has already confirmed that the US dollar's dominance is shrinking. Back in 2000, the dollar accounted for more than 70% of global reserves. By 2023, this share had fallen to just 58%, and the decline is expected to continue. Meanwhile, China's digital yuan, a government-controlled digital currency, is already being tested for use in international oil trade transactions. This development marks a significant step toward creating an alternative financial system that could rival the US dollar. If BRICS succeeds in launching an alternative global reserve currency, the U.S. will lose its most powerful tool of global influence. Without the world's reliance on the dollar, Washington will no longer be able to impose sanctions, control capital flows, or manipulate markets to its advantage. The U.S.'s ability to print money and impose financial restrictions has been crucial to its global dominance. The American economy is built on debt, and that debt is sustained by global demand for the US dollar. But if BRICS and other countries begin trading in their own currencies, this artificial demand will vanish, sending inflation soaring in the US and weakening Washington's ability to project power on the global stage. This is why Trump is so afraid of BRICS' financial ambitions. The BRICS bloc isn't just creating an alternative currency. It's laying the foundation for a world where the U.S. no longer calls the shots. The stakes are high, and Washington knows that if BRICS continues its push for de-dollarization, the U.S.'s financial power will diminish, potentially leading to a crisis in America. The dollar's global importance will erode, and the U.S. will no longer hold the same leverage over the global economy. Trump has tried to portray himself as a tough leader, claiming that his threats forced BRICS to back down. However, the reality is far different. Instead of collapsing under U.S. pressure, BRICS has expanded at an unprecedented rate. At the 2023 BRICS Summit, 5 new countries, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the UAE, were officially welcomed into the bloc. This expansion marks one of the most significant geopolitical shifts in decades, as more nations turn to BRICS as a counterbalance to Western financial dominance. Furthermore, countries like Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, and Thailand are actively discussing joining BRICS in the near future. Trump's weapon of choice, tariffs, has proven ineffective in the past. In 2018, he imposed massive tariffs on China, hoping to force Beijing to change its trade policies. Instead, China retaliated by cutting agricultural imports from the U.S., devastating American farmers and causing consumer prices to soar. Manufacturing jobs also declined due to the rising costs of imported materials. Now, Trump is threatening to impose a 150% tariff on BRICS nations. But this strategy could backfire even further. The U.S. relies heavily on BRICS imports, including electronics, rare earth metals, agricultural products, and pharmaceuticals. If these goods are heavily taxed, American companies will be forced to raise prices, leading to even higher inflation and a weakening economy. Meanwhile, BRICS nations have alternatives to the U.S. market. China can redirect its exports to Africa and Latin America, while Russia has expanded its energy trade with India and the Middle East, reducing its reliance on the U.S., Brazil, and South Africa. Major exporters of food and natural resources are strengthening their trade relationships with China and Europe. As a result, Trump's tariff strategy is unlikely to succeed. Instead of weakening BRICS, it will only accelerate the group's plans for economic independence, ensuring that Washington's influence continues to decline. Trump's aggressive trade policies are not only failing to weaken BRICS, they're also isolating the U.S. from the global economy. While BRICS nations are forging new trade relationships, America is losing influence even among its allies. Bilateral trade between China and Russia reached a record $240 billion in 2023, proving that Western sanctions have failed to isolate Moscow. India is increasing its energy purchases from Russia, moving away from the U.S.-dominated oil market. Furthermore, trade between Africa and China reached $282 billion in 2023, signaling that African nations are increasingly prioritizing partnerships outside Western influence. The U.S. is not only isolating itself from BRICS, it is also alienating its closest allies. Trump's aggressive tariff policies have damaged long-standing relationships with countries like Mexico, Canada, and the European Union. By imposing tariffs on Mexican and Canadian imports, Trump has pushed both nations to strengthen trade ties with China. Meanwhile, the European Union is actively exploring alternative financial systems, concerned about U.S. sanctions and the dollar's instability. European nations are now considering diversifying trade settlements in currencies like the yuan and the euro. By waging trade wars, even against its allies, Washington is accelerating the decline of the U.S.-led economic order. The future is clear. BRICS is no longer reacting to U.S. economic threats. It is actively building an alternative financial system that could reshape global trade forever. The foundation for this financial revolution is already being laid. Russia has proposed a gold-backed BRICS currency, which could become a direct competitor to the U.S. dollar in international trade. Unlike the debt-driven U.S. dollar, a gold-backed BRICS currency would maintain real value, making it highly attractive to nations seeking a stable financial system. The world is changing, and BRICS is at the forefront of this transformation. Trump's threats only confirm what is already clear. Washington knows it is losing its grip on global finance, and the U.S. dollar's dominance is no longer guaranteed.